Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with Pascaven Podcasts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Now, true crime fans, I know you all love to get behind the yellow tape. But have you ever stopped to think about, who cleans up those scenes after the detectives leave?
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into the world of crime scene cleaners.
It's a world.
Those folks who deal with the aftermath of, well, everything.
It's a side of true crime that we rarely consider, We're so captivated by the investigations and the psychology of it all, but what happens after the forensics team, packs up their gear?
Right.
What's it like to walk into a space where a tragedy has unfolded and to, try to restore it to a sense of normalcy?
Okay, so let's unpack this. The sources we have today paint a pretty fascinating picture of this profession.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to look at their daily routines, the emotional and physical demands they face, and even some of the unexpected rewards they find in their work.
It's a world that requires a unique set of skills, that's for sure. You need empathy to understand the gravity of the situations you're walking into, but also detachment to be able to do the job effectively. Okay. And then there's the meticulousness, the problem-solving skills, and a whole lot of resilience.
I imagine mental preparation is crucial for these folks.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the techniques that crime scene cleaners use to kind of steel themselves before they enter a scene? They never know what they're going to encounter.
Well, one crime scene cleaner, Emily put it perfectly, you never know what kind of scene you'll be walking into. She said, some days it's a quiet home where tragedy struck, and other days it's a chaotic public area. So finding ways to center themselves is essential before entering a scene.
Right.
Some cleaners meditate, others exercise. It's about finding what allows them to face the unpredictable nature of the job.
It makes me think of first responders.
Mm-hmm.
They use similar techniques to cope with the stress and trauma that they encounter. So once they are mentally prepared, though, it's not like grabbing your laptop and heading to the office. Yeah. What does gearing up for a job like this actually entail?
Right. It's a whole different kind of gear. We're talking full personal protective equipment, gloves, masks, coveralls, respirators in some cases.
Wow.
And then there's the specialized toolkit, biohazard bags, industrial-grade disinfectants, and some pretty high-tech equipment like ozone machines.
Ozone machines. That sounds intense.
Yeah.
Tell me more about why those are necessary, and also, what kind of training do you need to operate all of this?
Well, ozone machines are used for odor removal. Think about it. You're dealing with scenes that might involve blood, bodily fluids decomposition. The odors can be incredibly pervasive and difficult to eliminate. Ozone generators help neutralize those lingering smells at a molecular level.
Right.
It's not just about making the space look clean, it's about making it feel clean and livable again.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about scrubbing the surfaces. It's about restoring a sense of normalcy to a space that's been, disrupted by something horrific.
Yeah.
What about the training? Do you need a specific degree to become a crime scene cleaner?
Interestingly, there isn't a specific degree required, but certifications in biohazard cleanup and bloodborne pathogen handling are crucial. They also need to be well-versed in OSHA regulations to ensure their safety and the safety of others.
So you're dealing with some pretty hazardous materials. What kind of person thrives in an environment like that?
You need a unique combination of empathy and detachment. You're surrounded by the aftermath of trauma, but you need to remain objective and focused on the task at hand.
Right.
You're also constantly problem-solving, thinking on your feet, and adapting to new situations.
It sounds like a job that would really test your ability to compartmentalize. One cleaner, Jake, said, you've got to be adaptable. He said, one day you might be dealing with a small accident, and the next you're handling a large-scale incident. What happens when the call comes in? Is it a similar rush to what firefighters experience?
Crime scene cleaners are often on call 24/7, so there's definitely that element of urgency.
Right.
They usually get the initial information from a dispatcher, the location, the type of scene, whether it's an unattended death, a homicide, a suicide, even an industrial accident.
Wow.
And any special instructions from law enforcement.
So you get the call, you gear up, you arrive at the scene, but I imagine the atmosphere is very different from what we see on, crime shows.
Absolutely. One cleaner described it as a surreal handoff. You go from a scene swarming with police and investigators to suddenly being alone with the aftermath.
Wow, that transition must be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
From the hustle and bustle of an active crime scene to the quiet stillness of the aftermath. What are the first steps once a crime scene cleaner arrives?
The first step is always a thorough assessment. They identify biohazards, which are essentially any biological materials that pose a risk to human health, like blood or bodily fluids.
Cool.
They document the site with photos and notes for transparency, and then they plan their cleaning approach.
So it's not just about, scrubbing everything down. There's a real strategy involved.
Exactly. A small area might require basic disinfection, while a larger, more complex scene could involve removing carpets, drywall, even furniture.
Wow.
It's about making the space safe and habitable again. And it's important to remember there's a human element to all of this.
Right.
They often interact with grieving families or property owners, so sensitivity and empathy are crucial.
That's a really important point. It's not just about cleaning up a physical space. It's about acknowledging the emotional weight of the situation. So the assessment's done, the plan is in place. Walk me through the actual cleaning process. What does that look like?
They start by carefully removing any materials contaminated with biohazards, like blood or bodily fluids.
Okay.
Everything goes into specially marked biohazard bags for safe disposal.
Got it.
Then they disinfect every surface with industrial-strength cleaners to eliminate any lingering pathogens.
And I can only imagine the odors that must be present in some of these scenes, especially in cases involving decomposition. How do they deal with that aspect of the cleanup?
Odor removal is a huge part of the job.
Yeah.
They use specialized equipment like ozone generators and fogging machines to neutralize those lingering odors.
So they really are equipped to handle anything.
Yeah.
Is restoration part of the job too?
It can be. Depending on the damage, they might repaint walls, replace carpets, or even repair structural elements. It's all about returning the space to a livable condition as if the traumatic event had never occurred.
It's amazing what they're able to do.
Yeah.
And all of this often happens in a single day. Imagine handling all of that before taking a lunch break.
Right.
That does put things into perspective. What happens during that lunch break, though? Do they just try to eat and relax amidst all of that?
It's more about taking a much-needed mental break. Jake mentioned that they often talk about everyday things, sorts movies, their families, anything to reconnect with normalcy.
That makes sense. You need that separation to process everything you've seen and experienced. Do they usually return to the same scene after lunch, or is it on to a completely new job?
It varies. Some days it's back to the same scene to finish up. Other times it's on to a completely new job. They might handle multiple scenes in a single day. A smaller cleanup in the morning, followed by a larger, more complex one in the afternoon.
So not only are they dealing with these intense situations, but they're also juggling multiple jobs, each with its own unique challenges. What kind of variety are we talking about here?
It could be anything from cleaning up after an unattended death in an apartment to handling a hoarding situation that's gotten out of control.
Oh, wow.
One day it might be a crime scene, the next it could be a biohazard spill in a lab. It's not a job for the faint of heart.
No kidding. And we've talked about the physical demands and the mental focus required. But what about the emotional toll? You're constantly confronted with the aftermath of trauma loss, even violence. How do crime scene cleaners cope with that?
That's a crucial aspect we can't overlook. Our sources were very honest about the emotional burden. They emphasized the importance of having healthy coping mechanisms.
What kind of coping mechanisms are we talking about? What works for them?
Many turn to therapy or support groups, while others find solace in hobbies that allow them to decompress and detach from the intensity of the work.
Right.
Things like spending time in nature, listening to music, or engaging in creative pursuits can provide a much-needed outlet.
It's so important to have those outlets, those ways to process and release the emotional weight of the job. Did any of the cleaners offer specific advice for managing the emotional side of things?
Jake offered a piece of advice that really resonated with me. You can't bottle it up. Talking about it, whether it's with a therapist, a trusted friend, or even colleagues who understand the unique nature of the work, is essential. Bottling up those emotions can lead to burnout and even more serious mental health issues down the line.
That's such an important message, not just for crime scene cleaners, but for anyone dealing with difficult or traumatic experiences. It's okay to not be okay, and it's crucial to seek support. Now, I'm curious about the business side of things. Who hires crime scene cleaners? Is it always the police?
It's actually more diverse than you might think. Property owners, law enforcement agencies, and insurance companies are the most common clients. But sometimes families of the deceased might hire them directly.
So there's a whole network involved, police departments, funeral homes, real estate agencies, all connected to this service. It really highlights how this profession is interwoven into our society, even though it's often unseen. And insurance often covers the cost, right?
Yes, in many cases, biohazard cleanup is considered a necessary step in property restoration, so insurance companies often foot the bill.
We followed a crime scene cleaner through their day from the initial call to the meticulous cleaning process. But what happens as the day winds down? Do they just clock out and head home?
There's a bit more to it than that. The evening usually involves returning to base unloading equipment, sanitizing tools, and restocking supplies. It's a way to prepare for the next call and, in a sense, create a sense of closure to the day.
There's something symbolic about that, isn't there? Cleaning and organizing your tools as a way to reset and prepare for whatever comes next. But there has to be more to it than just the physical act of cleaning up. Do they ever reflect on the day, on the people, and the stories behind the scenes they've handled?
Our sources definitely touched on that. Reflection seems to be a common thread Emily mentioned, thinking about the families affected by the tragedies they've witnessed, hoping they find peace and healing.
That sense of connection, of wanting to bring some solace to those who are grieving, that has to be a powerful driving force for many crime scene cleaners. It's not just a job. It's a way to make a difference in the darkest of times.
Exactly. And that brings us to an interesting point, the rewards of the job. We've talked about the challenges, the demands, the emotional weight, but what about the sense of fulfillment? What motivates someone to do this work day after day?
Yeah, it can't just be about the paycheck. There has to be something deeper, something that keeps them going despite the difficult nature of the work.
Both Jake and Emily spoke about the unique sense of pride they feel in their work. It's about restoring order, bringing a sense of normalcy back to a space that's been shattered by tragedy.
It's almost like they're invisible healers working behind the scenes to mend not just physical spaces, but emotional wounds as well. They witness the worst of humanity, yet they choose to focus on the act of restoring, of rebuilding.
Jake put it beautifully. You're restoring not just a space, but a sense of normalcy. That's something you can feel good about. And that, I think, gets to the heart of what makes this profession so compelling. It's about finding meaning and purpose in the face of difficult circumstances.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of crime scene cleaning, I have to say my perspective has definitely shifted. It's a job that requires a rare combination of skills, resilience, and empathy.
It's a profession that often goes unnoticed, yet it plays a vital role in helping individuals, families, and communities heal and move forward.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there are people working tirelessly to bring light and restoration. It makes you appreciate, those unseen heroes, the folks that are working behind the scenes to help us navigate through these difficult times. We've talked about the challenges of crime scene cleaning, but I'm curious, are there ever any moments of, unexpected beauty or even humor that they encounter in this line of work?
You might be surprised, but yes, there are moments of levity even in the face of tragedy. It's often a way for cleaners to cope with the emotional weight of what they see and experience.
I can imagine.
One cleaner told a story about finding a collection of hilarious cat memes taped to the inside of a refrigerator.
Oh, wow.
It was a small thing, but it brought a much-needed moment of laughter to a particularly difficult scene.
That's so human, isn't it? Even in the darkest of places, we find ways to connect, to laugh, to hold on to, that sense of hope. We tend to focus on the physical aspects of cleaning. But what about the emotional cleansing that takes place? How do crime scene cleaners help restore not just the space, but the peace of mind for those who have been affected by the tragedy?
It's a profound aspect of the job. Emily talked about how she often finds herself offering words of comfort to families, simply listening to their stories and letting them know that they're not alone.
Right.
Sometimes it's about creating a sense of closure by carefully removing personal belongings and returning them to loved ones.
It's like they're acting as a bridge between the tragedy and the healing process, providing a sense of support and compassion during a time of immense grief.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that their work goes beyond the physical cleanup. They're facilitating a process of emotional recovery as well.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of crime scene cleaning, I'm left with a sense of awe and respect for the individuals who choose this path. It's a demanding job both physically and emotionally, but it's also a job that carries a profound sense of purpose. What final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with today?
I think it's important to remember that behind every crime scene, behind every tragedy, there are real people whose lives have been irrevocably changed. Crime scene cleaners play a vital role in helping those individuals and their communities heal and move forward. They are the unseen hands that restore order to chaos, bringing a sense of peace and normalcy back to spaces that have been shattered by tragedy.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is hope, there's resilience, and there are people who dedicate themselves to making the world a little bit brighter, one cleanup at a time. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been a truly eye-opening conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And for our listeners, remember to check out our show notes for more information on crime scene cleaning and the resources available to those affected by trauma. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to PaskFan Podcasts. It really does help the channel. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.